Cześć wam wszystkim, kochani. Mój dzisiejszy film jest troszeczkę inny niż wszystkie moje filmy dotychczasowe, ale to dlatego, że dostaję od was najwięcej pytań, wiadomości z pytaniami, jak zalegalizować swój pobyt w Stanach. Chciałbym wyjechać do Stanów. Jak mogę to zrobić? Na jakiej zasadzie mogę mieszkać i pracować legalnie w Stanach? Cały czas zadajecie mi te pytania, więc przypomniałam sobie, że mam znajomego prawnika imigracyjnego, z którym przeprowadziłam właśnie wywiad. Więc jeżeli chcecie wiedzieć na temat wiz pracowniczych, różnych rodzajów wiz pracowniczych, na jakiej zasadzie można dostać wizy pracownicze, a również na jakiej zasadzie można dostać zieloną kartę bazowaną na pracy w Stanach, ten wywiad jest dla Was. Przetłumaczyłam go całego, nie ja, ktoś mi przetłumaczył, ale oglądajcie go do końca, ponieważ naprawdę można się dowiedzieć mnóstwo bardzo fajnych, praktycznych rzeczy. A propos, prawnik, z którym rozmawiałam, ten mój znajomy, to nie jest jakiś pierwszy, lepszy, byle jaki prawnik, którego gdzieś, nie wiem, wygrzebałam nie wiadomo skąd, tylko jeżeli zgooglujecie w wyszukiwarce prawników imigracyjnych, troszeczkę głośno jest tutaj, w moich okolicach, w okolicach Filadelfii, to ta kancelaria imigracyjna wychodzi jako pierwsza z najlepszymi opiniami, najbardziej popularna, najbardziej znana w naszych okolicach. Oni mają 3 lokalizacje. I Matt jest jednym z partnerów, z 3 prawników w tej firmie, w tej kancelarii.
Anyway, hi, and thank you for doing this. How funny that we know each other for 3 different reasons.
Right. So we know each other through the medical arts building, through Caricia, and what's the third one? Fantasy football.
Fantasy football in my head.
Yes, with Ryan. Yes. So we do. You're right. There are 3 reasons. That's actually pretty impressive. I didn't even think about that.
I know. So yeah, I actually have a little bit of a cheat sheet here on the questions that I sent you.
Sure.
Oh, maybe actually you tell us first where you work.
Oh, right. So I am one of the founding members of a law firm called Solo Hartnett and Galvin, which is a law firm that started last year in the middle of the pandemic, which wasn't the way we planned it, but that's what happened. And we're only an immigration law firm, so we don't do anything else. We just do immigration. And there's 3 attorneys presently at our firm, including myself, and then we have another 9 or 10 paralegals and support staff.
Yeah.
So, and we're located, I should probably say offices. We're located in Philadelphia and Center City. We also have an office in Collingswood, New Jersey, which is about 15 minutes from Center City, and then an office in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, which is in Chester County. So we have those 3 locations.
People are asking me constantly, hey, I'm a baker. Do I have a chance to get papers in the States? Or I'm a barber, but I'm a really good barber, and things like that. So tell us a little bit about this. Who can be hired by an American company?
Absolutely. There's different possibilities depending on the job, the type of job, and the type of job offer. So there's seasonal employment. So that's employment that's part of the year in the United States. So think of somebody who's going to work at a resort or at a ski resort that's only open in the wintertime.
Like a work and travel program, kind of?
Sort of. The H2, so there's those 2, which are usually on J1 visas that are, could be an au pair or something like that, or an internship. But there's also people that come, it could be also in agriculture because, again, part of the, the southern part of the United States, people that work in agriculture, it's a seasonal position. So it means that, obviously in the wintertime, we don't have agricultural work, just as in the summertime, the ski resorts are closed. So it's the same concept. There's certain, and it's not limited to skiing or agriculture, but there are seasonal visas available called H-2B visas. And those visas generally, again, are for positions that are part of the year and not the full year. So what you would do is you would be here for 6 or 7 months, and you would go home to your country and then come back the following season. Okay. Generally speaking, they're positions that wouldn't require a university degree, but also are very viable positions in terms of what you can make and what you can do to support your family economically. So that's one visa option in terms of to come on a work visa to work in the United States. Another
how easy or difficult it is to.
Well, I mean, that's the key is like in order to get an H-2B visa, and this is for all of the visas and all the employment options, is it really comes down to who you know and networking. So a big part of it is networking with people in the United States. So what I tell people generally is people that have tourist visas or have the ability to come to the United States, you know, with the visa waiver program,
Yeah.
as in the case in Europe, you know, what I would say is that they should really consider, you know, first coming to the United States to network.
I say the same thing. I love that you're saying that. I always say that to just come for 3 months, 6 months, see, you know, who you're gonna meet. Like people, if people like you, there's like no limit what they can offer you and how much they can help you.
Agatha, that's the key. But networking is such an important thing because at the end of the day, you're going to need an employer almost always. And there's really special cases that we can talk about at the end of people that don't need an employer to sponsor them. But that's the key. I mean, it's networking. You don't put your name in a hat and then the employers pick it. Like you have to actually connect yourself with the employer.
Make them want you.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the other similar type, not similar, but there's another type of visa that's again, it's a visa for work. It's not a green card. Is an H-1B visa. So the H-2B is the seasonal visa, and the H-1B is the visa that is usually for more professional positions that require a university degree. So somebody who was an accountant or you know in Poland and had a job offer in the United States and had a degree in accounting would be a good example, or somebody who's a civil engineer and has an engineering degree and they have a job offer from a US company to be an engineer, another example. Okay. So the one thing that's a little bit different about the H-1B, I should say, is, and well, actually both of these visas are capped annually. So there's a certain amount of visas that are allotted for the whole country. And what inevitably happens, especially with the H-1B process, is that each year there's a lottery, and in that lottery, people try and even if they have the job offer. So let's say the person comes here, they network, they find a job offer, it's ready to go, and they have the offer, they want to come and work in the United States. They have to put their name in the lottery, and they might not get picked in the lottery. So that's the tough part.
Okay.
So the lottery, you know, is just to go through the process, and then after the lottery is complete, let's say you do get selected, and it's a random selection process, then you have to kind of go through the adjudication process. Like you have to show that the position is, you know, meets the criteria of a position that requires a bachelor's degree, that you have the engineering degree, that you're qualified for the job. So the last couple years for the H-1B visa process has been very frustrating because more people. There's only, I think it's 67,000 visas available for the whole country, plus another 20,000 for people that have master's degrees. So what ends up happening, you only have 80, you know, close to 90,000 visas. And then, you know, ultimately probably hundreds of thousands of people apply. So they pick, it's a random thing. Like there's no people ask me like, oh, how do I beat the lottery? There's no way to beat the lottery. You just,
the lottery.
It's random.
It's like a green card lottery that
it's similar to that, except it's the difference though with the green card lottery. If you win the green card lottery, you get the green card. Whereas with the H-1B, if you win the H-1B lottery, they just say, okay, now you can apply. You know, you don't actually
not
get
guaranteed that you're gonna get that visa, working visa anyway. It's just a
correct. So the H-1B lottery just happened in March. So, and that's for people that are going to come in October. So really somebody that wants an H-1B visa is going to have to go into the next year's lottery for then to be able to come to the United States in October 2022. Now, there are some other options. And before we get to green card, there's one other option that is available to people from Poland because Poland, I believe at some point in time back in the 1990s, signed a trade agreement with the United States. And that is an investor visa, okay? And that's an E2 or E1 or E2. And the investor visa is if somebody has, so let's say, I think you mentioned, Agatha, somebody who's a baker in Poland. If somebody has a bakery in Poland and they want to open a bakery in the United States and they want to invest in that business and start you create a U.S. company, put a substantial amount of capital into it, and start developing their business. they could try to do an investor visa, and that process could work. I mean, it really depends on the business, depends on how much you invest, and it depends on what type of business plan you have. So that's something that is an option. You know, again, for some people, not for everybody. It's probably going to be more of an option for somebody that already has a successful business in their home country. You know. And it's not available for all countries. It's certain countries that have these trade agreements with the United States.
Okay, well, then good thing we have it. Poland has it.
Wait, so in full disclosure, I couldn't remember off the top of my head if Poland did have a trade agreement with the United States, but they do. Apparently, it was signed, and this is the beauty of the internet. It was signed August 6th, 1994. So that's good. Again, not all countries have them. You know, for example, my wife Griselis is from Venezuela. Venezuela does not have a trade agreement with the United States, so Venezuelan citizens cannot do E2 visas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You have to invest 500,000. I read it somewhere. That
Okay, so that's a different one. That's a different one. So the E2, you don't need to invest that much. I mean, you know, it really depends on what type of business you want to start. But an investment in a U.S. business for the E2 visa wouldn't get you a green card, but it will allow you to be here and work.
Right.
It does not have to be that much. It could be less than 100,000. It could be, you know, it could in theory be less than 50,000. You know,
so case by case.
Case by case, correct. The
Okay.
definition is a substantial investment, whatever that means. Now, what you're talking about is an EB-5, and that is available to really any country.
Mhm.
The problem with the EB-5 is that you need to risk. It used to be 500,000 in low risk areas. Now it's $900,000 in low risk areas. So if you invest over, you know, $900,000 in a business in the United States, then yes, you would likely qualify for a green card, assuming you create jobs and there's like a process that you
That's
go
a very small percentage of Polish people that I know that would be.
It is. It's a really, and it's not just having, like what I consult with clients about this a lot. And I say, look, it's not just having that much money.
Right.
It's about risking it. It's about risking, you know, close to $1 million.
Employing people from a different country.
Correct. And so that's where it becomes difficult. And actually there's special lawyers in the immigration field that actually do those types of visas. So we don't even do EB-5s. Because you need a special type of malpractice insurance to do them. So we have a colleague that, you know, that she works at one of the biggest firms that does them.
Yeah,
so
that's not probably my main focus anyway. This kind.
So let's talk about maybe the green card, right? So the green card process is another way to kind of go through the employment-based immigration process, and that process is different than the H-1B and the H-2B in that there's no lottery. Okay, so that's good. That there's no lottery. The bad part of that process is that before you go through that process, so like let's say somebody whose name is Paul has a job offer. Let's say it's at a bakery, like at a bakery in the United States, and Paul's going to be a baker at a U.S. company. Before he applies with immigration, the company has to test the labor market. So they have to place ads in the newspaper, and they have to place ads online and try and find a baker.
Oh.
And if they don't find the baker, or if they don't find the right baker or a minimally qualified baker, then they can ask Paul to come and be their baker. And that's how it works. You know, nobody looks for jobs in the newspaper anymore. I mean, some people do, but most people look online. So the rules that they placed, each passing year, it in a way kind of gets easier to do these cases for especially for the non-professional positions, like, you know, somebody who doesn't need a college degree, because of the fact that, you know, you have to place these ads in the newspaper, and fewer people are actually looking in newspapers for jobs.
Right.
Yeah, it's an interesting process. There's a couple downsides. That's one of the downsides is that you have to go through that process. The other downside is that the company has to pay for it. And this is always a big thing, right? So, you know, you network with a company. So Paul networks with the bakery in the United States, and the bakery says, yeah, listen, Paul, we want you to come work here. And Paul talks to a lawyer, and the lawyer tells Paul that the bakery has to pay for the first part of the process. And then the bakery says, oh, I don't want to pay that. Paul, you should pay it because I'm giving you the job. The company really, really needs to want this person and view the employee as like as an investment. Is really the way it works. So some employers get scared away by the fact that they need to pay for step one of the testing of the labor market,
Because
including the ads.
we're not talking a little bit of money. I'm sure that process is pretty expensive, right?
Yeah, I would say so. The ads in Philadelphia generally would, cost a few $100s, but then the legal fees. So legal fees, I'd say lawyers charge anywhere from $3,500 to $5,000, $6,000 to do it. Again, those are high and low ranges.
Right.
And so the company would have to be responsible for that. And if you connect with the right company, you connect with the right employer, and you network, and your employer understands that your position, I mean, when you think about it, if the employer is confident that the person, that Paul the baker, is going to be with him for the next 5 years, of course it's worth the investment, right? Is that another downside, is that it takes a while to go through that whole testing of the labor market, and the process is actually called the perm labor certification process. And it takes probably at least a year and a half to go through that. So in terms of being able to immigrate to the United States, you're talking a minimum a two-year wait, more likely 3 years, especially because of the pandemic and how backed up consulates are.
Right, and you never have any guarantee that you're going to get that green card, because it's a process, right? Like if you fail to prove
Correct.
that there are no people to fill your position that are American citizens and all that, then you can probably waste that money and not get anywhere.
The way we do it, that's exactly true. And we're able to help employers to tell them where they need to place the ads, and we don't place it in more than we need to do by law.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, it really depends. I mean, I'd say generally speaking, we don't get a ton of applicants when we do this process. It really depends on the position. I mean, if the position's for an accountant, we get a lot of applicants. But there's certain positions that just don't attract a ton of applicants, even professional ones, and especially ones, so for example, if a language is required, now you can't just add on, oh, you need to speak Polish. You need to really demonstrate that the language is required at the business, right, which may be the case. Those types of cases tend to get fewer applicants, but then they also may take a little bit longer, because when the Department of Labor sees the language, they want to look a little bit more into it. But it's a very viable process, and it's just unfortunate that it takes a long time. Now, what happens when you get like a perfect applicant? So you get, if you get the equivalent of Paul the baker here in the United States, Paul the American baker that wants the job, what you do is you do a 6-month reset. So you're not done, but you're significantly delayed. You have to do a 6-month cooling off period, and then you can start over after 6 months.
Okay. Do you know of jobs and professions that, on top of your head, like people in America would be looking to hire from different country that is easier than?
Yes. There was an organization recently that contacted us and said that they were looking for people to work in the capacity of like home health aides, so people that like help the elderly. I mean, and those are really difficult jobs, right? You're assisting somebody with who's older that can't get out of bed because they're just elderly, or because they're sick. You're bringing them food, you're doing different things. We had an organization ask about that, and a lot of times what happens with people contact us and they say, okay, well, oh, this sounds great, we want to do this process, so how do we find the people? And I say, well, I can't find the people. I don't, I'm not a broker. You guys have to find who you want to bring from abroad. They tell me they want to bring people from abroad, but they don't know who the people are, and vice versa. We have people that say that obviously they want to come from abroad to immigrate. They don't know, they don't know how to contact them.
Agencies who hook up people who look like employers with employees from outside?
There are for the J1 process. So for like for that process, like au pairs and like
Right.
interns and stuff like that.
Wow. Okay. But this, I'm learning so much. I didn't realize all this stuff. So basically, the green card thing is not that difficult. It's just the
It's not.
hardest part is finding the company that will be willing
It
to
is.
sort of risk and put faith in you without really having experience in working with you before.
Correct. That's exactly it. The other thing is it should be related. I would say, well, there's two other important aspects to it. One is that the person's background probably should be related to what they're going to come to do, right? So
Right.
so like if it's going to be easier of a case to process if Paul the baker has baking experience in Poland. It's going to be much better for him to come as a baker than for him to come as an accountant because he doesn't have any accounting experience, right? So
Yeah.
that's one thing that's important to keep in mind. Another thing that's really, really, really important is that the U.S. company needs to be financially viable. Is the way the law was written. They want the company's net income to be above what the salary is. So if the salary for the Paul the baker is $35,000 a year, they want the company on their tax returns to show a $35,000 profit. And if not,
It's logical.
It is logical, but it is logical. I agree with you. So that's what they want to see. And if not, then the case could be in peril. And that's the worst part because that part of the financial part of the case comes up in part 2 of the immigration process, not even with the testing of the labor market. So what could happen is you could go through that whole process, be successful, have it approved, and then have it all fall apart in phase 2. And that's the worst.
It's important to know this is like ahead of time that you will be
So-
required to show your.
Exactly. And what we do, when we get one of these cases, I say, and this is hard for the employer. I say, I need to see your tax returns. The employer is like, well, why do you need to, and I say, I have to see them or else I can't.
I don't want to waste time and
It-
your time and
Let's say somebody's here on a tourist visa and they're here on the tourist visa and they meet the owner of the bakery and they
Exactly.
say, listen, we want you to start working. So if Paul the baker's on the tourist visa, well, he can't start working because he's not eligible to work on a tourist visa, but he can network, right? And and of course he could accept a job offer in the future. He just can't start working yet. Now the issue becomes is Paul's probably not going to want to go back to Poland because flying from the US to Europe is expensive. And so, people say, oh, can I just change my status? Well, you have to maintain your status first until you get to the point where you can actually submit the green card application. And that's where it becomes tricky because tourist visas, you're usually only allowed to have 6 months. You can do an extension, right? So you can get an extension for another 6 months. But the perm process a lot of times takes more than a year. So that's where it becomes tricky. I've had people switch from tourist to student status, and then they take English classes. And then they go from student to the green card once their process is approved. I've done that successfully multiple times, but it's tricky. It's tricky to do.
Changing to student visa from tourist visa, that's easier.
Is easier than correct because and then with the student visa, as long as you're taking English classes or studying, you can stay here. Again, you can in terms of working on a student visa, there's a couple options you can, depending on the school, right? So if it's like a school where you're pursuing a degree, maybe there's some type of campus, study option available. If it's English classes, you probably wouldn't be able to work while you're here. But that would at least allow you to kind of extend your period of time you're allowed to be here. As long as the key with changing to a student visa is, do you have money in the bank to show that you can support yourself?
That was the next thing I want to mention. Schools are expensive here, especially for people from a different country. That's triple.
That's the thing. And immigration, USCIS may not approve the change of status if you don't have enough money in the account. But that can happen soon. So you really need to have, demonstrate financial ability to pay for your classes without working. That's the key.
Got it. It all comes to networking or having money.
Having money. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Having friends or having money.
like many things in life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, totally.
There are other ways too. I mean, there's also family-based immigration, right? So if you
Well,
have
I'm a
family
big
members,
fan of just getting married and getting it all out of the way. So easy.
well, yeah. So marriage, right? Marriage is an option. Marriage has to be for the right reasons. You have to actually care about the
Of
person.
course,
Sometimes
of
you
course.
love each
I mean,
other.
if
Sometimes you
you're
hate each
gonna get
other.
married anyway, Matt, with
That's right.
someone, might as
Exactly.
well marry an American.
Hey, listen, my wife, as you know, is an immigrant, and she became a U.S. citizen through me,
Yeah,
and I'm a better person for it. So
exactly.
that's clearly an option.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and I'm
clearly an
not like
option
saying
too.
that in a like weird way, but like if people come here, for a few months or something, there's always a chance I feel like to
Another
develop
that's
some
a
kind of relationship with
that's
someone. Why
another
not?
way of networking, of course. I mean, that's if you meet somebody, the with marriage cases, the one thing you just have to be careful about is people. And again, this it's not just for green cards. People rush into marriage for different reasons, right? Because of social pressure, because of family pressure. Key with the law is that the people are really living together and really married for the right
Yes.
reason, like that they care about each other. And look, of course, like you know, if Paul the baker has one girlfriend who's a U.S. citizen and then has another girl that he likes that doesn't have any status, then maybe it's a good idea for Paul the baker
Well, yeah,
to develop his relationship with the U.S. citizen. Because
to put
again,
a
there's
little bit more work into the U.S. citizen relationship.
yeah, and so that's like, and again, like the key here is that immigration. So immigration can be what the law says is that it can be a reason that a person, you know, it can be. It just can't be the only reason. Is basically the point. I mean,
Sure.
for everybody, there's always that's in the back of a person's head is what their future is going to be in that country. So it's silly to completely ignore it and say, well, it can't be consideration. And there is case law that says that it can be a consideration. It just can't be the only reason. So really, the people that have problems are people that that don't really live together. People that,
Oh, I know. Yeah, I went to an interview with my ex-husband. Like I got papers through my ex-husband,
okay,
not this one. And we went to an interview, and I feel like the people who interview you, they are very well trained psychologists,
they are.
because I noticed the questions they asked, and the reactions, and we were sort of like kind of like bickering, but like not seriously. I'm like, oh come on, no, that's not like how it was. Or we had this interaction, and the guy smiled and said like, you are such a real couple, because we were like fighting a little bit, and I guess someone who's pretending they would try to be in such a like best possible behavior and just like hold hands the whole time, that seemed natural and authentic to the person that was interviewing us. And they said, okay, you don't have to go to like separate rooms or anything like that. They just like laughed.
And they do separate people.
Yeah.
It's they're very good at figuring out what a sham marriage is. Or so it's not worth it. Like what I would tell I would tell your viewers and listeners, it's just not worth getting into that problem, because what ends up happening is if you're caught in a sham marriage, you're done forever. You can't ever
Well, you
get your
can,
green
and I
card.
think the American citizen can get in a lot of trouble too.
Correct. The American citizen can also get fined a lot of money, and there's a lot of civil and criminal penalties. So you just have to be, obviously, as long as the marriage is bona fide and for the right reasons, there's not an issue.
Right.
So that's one way. Another way is through parents, through kids, and stuff like that. Other ways to immigrate. But obviously, if you have parents and kids here, you also have other networking opportunities.
Exactly, and you're probably not looking for working visa if you have
Probably not.
parents here who are citizens or have green cards. Like we know that's like the easiest way, but for most of these people that I talk to, that's not an option. They don't really have anyone in the
Right.
States, and it's
Exactly.
usually the question is usually like, how do I get it through work? Which you explained in such a great way that I feel so much more knowledgeable now.
There's things that are still kind of being developed by the Biden administration. I mean, immigration is such a hot button issue. The Democrats and the Biden administration want to attract a diverse group of voters to their party, and it becomes a political issue. And so I do think that there could be additional changes. I think one thing that may happen is there's going to be opening up or making, sort of the process a little bit faster, and also more visa numbers available for different categories. And whether that means, again, that some of those things they can control and others they can't. But it's something that, any type of change that is more sort of open-minded to keeping the United States a diverse country,
Right.
I think is a positive thing. The one area that we haven't talked about is like really special people, so really talented people. So like, let's say Paul the baker is the best baker in Poland.
Mhm.
So if that's the case, then there's ways for Paul the baker to skip the line and to kind of just come here because of how amazing of a baker he is.
Ah,
And that would be a scenario where, you really can prove that Paul has won awards for baking in Poland, that he is well renowned, that, he's like the Steven Star baker of Poland. And
Okay.
if that's the case, then you don't have to do the ads in the newspaper. You just apply and they would probably just give Paul a green card.
Wow, there are so many nuances.
There really are. There really are. And it depends a lot on the person's background, their education, their skills, their experience. And again, the key is who you know.
Yeah, and so it seems like every little case is completely different. Like it depends on the person. Like little things in the person's background can change the outcome of
Definitely.
application and process and everything.
Definitely. And this is something we tell people all the time is, I have people that come to our office for consultations and they say, oh, well, my friend did this and this. It could be similar, but we hear that all the time, and everybody's situation is different. There's always one fact that doesn't quite match up that changes the whole thing, and that's why it's really hard. And talking to lawyers is important to a degree, and networking,
Yeah. So do you guys do consultations?
We do.
People who just
We do consultations. We do, consultations from people all over the United States and people that call from abroad too. And really what we do during the consultation is try to orient people. I'd say generally speaking, there's two types of people that contact us for consultations. A person that really has already looked into and researched the issue and they have specific questions about a particular, process. And then there's other people that just say, and both are fine. And then there's other people that say, look, I just want to see what options there are.
Okay, but you have a general idea after you talk to them too, like which route you can take, which could be the most effective,
we do.
possibly. Okay.
We do. So for Paul the baker from Poland, who doesn't have any family in the United States, and doesn't have enough money to invest in a bakery in the United States, I would say, yeah, Paul, come for a visit and network.
I guess the best advice would be to just come on your either the we call it ESTA,
Correct.
right? Or the 6-month visa if you have the old type of visa that Poland used to have. A lot of people still have it. And just network the crap out of your trip. Meet people, get to know people in your field, and see if anything comes up, right?
I think that's a great idea. Again, neither of those visas allow you to actually work, but they do allow you to.
You can always talk to people, right?
Of course.
And I think that's that's truly the best way, because trying to email companies that don't know you, they don't know who you are from abroad, what are the chances that they actually gonna start a serious dialogue with you if they didn't see you face to face?
No, that's just unrealistic in my view. I mean, unless there's something about you that's really just magnificent, it's just very unlikely that somebody from abroad is going to get that much support from a resume.
I can't thank you enough. This is awesome. I've learned so much. That's great. Thank you so much for
that was really fun. It was really good to see you too, and I had a good time.
Mam nadzieję, że w tym wywiadzie odpowiedzieliśmy na wszystkie Wasze najważniejsze pytania związane z uzyskaniem stałego pobytu w Stanach poprzez pracę. Dzięki, pa pa.